Good morning, everyone. I want to call the meeting of the Planning and Zoning Board together at this point. I would like to ask a member of the dais if someone would stand and volunteer to present the pledge.
Please rise.
Flag to the left-hand corner. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Chairman Hershenson.
All right, present.
Vice Chairman Townsend.
Here.
Member Lombardo.
Here.
Member Brown.
Here.
Member Doogie.
Here.
Member Lohan. And Mr. Lohan requested that he be excused today. And Member Waterhouse, she also requested that she be excused.
Okay, so we have a quorum of 5, which is sufficient to discuss and decide on any matters that come before us. At this time, for anybody who wishes to speak, please stand and be sworn in by our attorney. Anybody wishes to speak?
Is this
You know what, you never know when it's just gonna fall upon you, so if you could raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? All right, thank you.
At this point, because this is a quasi-judicial sort of agenda, I'd like to call forth members of the public who wish to speak at this moment.
Chairman, we have one registered speaker, Linda Lyles. Please approach that lectern and state your name.
My name is Linda Lyles. As a member of the Bonita Springs Historical Society since it was formed, and married into the Lyles pioneer family 56 years ago, and have had such a deep love for Bonita Springs ever since, I am praying God will speak to the hearts of all the people in power to make things happen to help preserve Bonita's awesome history. And we'll try harder to save the buildings being discussed for demolition at today's meetings. Many people fought very hard back in 1980s, including my husband, a pioneer grandson of J.W. Lyles, Byron Lyles, to save the Bonita Springs Elementary School from being demolished, and it worked back then. But it didn't work last year in 2025, and now this precious part of the historic roots is gone forever, replaced with memories only. Maybe enough people who had money and power didn't stand up to help save it. But the people in this meeting today can do something to help preserve these next 2 buildings that just a few people, compared to the whole city of Bonita, want to demolish. Since the owner of the stage told my husband and I that he would like to buy the previous Wonder Gardens restaurant and turn it into a nice restaurant to go with the theme of this nostalgic area, but seemed to be being kept from doing it. So, my question is, why? The Southwest Florida Report posted this building as well as the remaining structure of the original Good Bread and Dixie Moon Cafe was vacant for so long and not being kept up. Why was the city not taking care of these 2 historic buildings? Anything can be repaired if the desire is there and the money is there. And it seems there is money to do things that aren't really needed, like additional parks or even building a new library when the previous library really was sufficient. I'm just praying that all the people on this board today, as well as the mayor and the whole city council, will listen to God's voice for determining what to demolish in our current city that helped to create our city that can never be replaced. Thank you so much.
Does any member of the board wish to question Mrs. Lyles? Okay. Hearing none, at this time, I'd like to call on Mike Fegon to go over the presentation for the city.
So that takes us to 5A, and this is a request to demolish the former restaurant building at 27100/180 Old 41 Road.
Good morning, everybody. Mike Fegon with Community Development for the record. So when it comes to the historic preservation items, these are handled a little bit differently than your zoning items. Typically with your zoning items, there's a full-on presentation, there's a staff report, there's recommendations, the whole shebang. With historic preservation items, a lot of times we just let the evidence speak for itself, so we don't necessarily provide a recommendation. You review the evidence and the findings on its merits in conjunction with the code criteria. So in this specific case, yes, you do have 2 demolition requests before you. We're going to handle the first one, which is for the former restaurant building located at the site of the Bonita Wonder Gardens. And what you have in your packet is a list of approval criteria that need to be taken into account when you make a decision whether or not to vote to demolish a historic resource. There's a big portion of that criteria, though, that relies on whether or not the demolition is being ordered by a government body. So also included in your packet is meeting minutes and a green sheet item from a city council meeting from December 17th, 2025, where this building was discussed specifically, and it was voted on by city council to go ahead and instruct staff, because the city owns the property, to go through the demolition process for this particular structure. The reasons that they outlined are in the green sheet if you want to review them specifically. And to that, I don't really know if I have too much more to say unless you have specific questions about this particular building.
Anybody have any questions here?
I just have one. So has there been any private funding interested in preserving the building that you know of?
Not to my knowledge, no. There were facilities assessments that were done that sort of helped fill in some of the gaps for the city in terms of what it would take, the financial responsibility on the city side to bring the building back. On the other side of it, you do have the Wonder Gardens administration that has a master plan project for the overall site, and I believe they have options that could include this building but also do not, that include something else in its place or that space being utilized for something different. So since I wasn't directly involved in the facilities assessment, I don't want to speak too much to that, but to my knowledge, there has not been any interest on the city side or any evident conversation of wanting to save that building with private funding.
Thank you.
Mike, the plan that you're talking about that the Winter Gardens has that been approved, reviewed, or accepted by council yet?
It's been presented to city council, and they are currently pursuing that master plan. So actually, they're getting ready to submit additional permitting for one portion of their plan that has nothing to do with what we're talking about today. But yes, they are moving forward with that master plan.
So nothing in their plans at present hinge on the existence or the demolition of this building?
Not at this time.
Could I ask the attorney for more detail on if there's a government, say, statement regarding demolition of an historic building? Does that take precedence?
What do you mean? I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. A government statement?
I'm sorry?
You asked about a government statement. I'm not, so the criteria would be, is the demolition being called for by a government? For instance, it's an unsafe structure.
Okay.
You know, that's what Mike was referring to.
Mike, do you have anything to add to that?
I would just say that in the green sheet and in the meeting minutes, it lays out what council's thoughts are about the safety concerns of that particular structure and the money that would need to be spent to alleviate all of that. And that's why city council, as the government body, voted unanimously to demolish the structure.
But this board could give its opinion, which could be different from that.
It could, and this is where I'm going to rely on Derek, because typically what would happen is if this board chooses to deny a certificate of appropriateness, the applicant has the right to appeal the decision to city council. So with city council being the owners of the property, that gets a little interesting.
So it's important for those of us on this board to ask whatever questions and whatever your opinion is on the matter that Mrs. Lyles made reference to. We should listen to it, but, so what are your thoughts?
And I had a question.
Sure.
Along with the chairman's question, there was an engineering report, I guess, mentioned in the green sheet. Something about it states and I don't know which structure this is, so it did mention poor and deteriorating condition. And there was an engineering report referenced.
Yeah, so there was 2 reports that were done. There was what's called a facilities assessment, where the city pays engineers to go out and assess all of the city-owned facilities. And then there was also separate reporting done for the next structure on the list, because it was moved from its previous location to its current location. So there was a lot of reporting that went into that.
Okay, that makes sense.
Anybody else on the board? Yes, go ahead.
When the city took the property over, the condition, is that what was listed in the green sheet?
It was in poor shape when we took it over.
And then, second, did the city have any plans when they purchased it of what they wanted to do with it, or?
So initially, very early on, the idea, and this was before the facilities report was done, the city did engage the private sector for interest in leasing that space. There was a leasee that took over the building they lasted about a year, and a lot of it tied back to the concerns of the structure itself. And so since then it's been vacant, so it's probably been vacant for the better part of a decade.
Thank you.
The reason for the city pursuing this at this juncture is because they want to get ahead of the curve on developing the Wonder Gardens, or are they in fear that there may be public safety issues by allowing?
I think it's both. You know, right now that building is non-accessible. So if you wanted to go inside it, it's completely fenced and walled off. There's a lock. You can't get in the building right now. And that is done specifically for 2 reasons. 1, safety concerns with the building. And 2, because the Wonder Gardens is actively under construction in other areas and pursuing their master plan. So again, I don't want to speak for City Council per se, but based on the reading of the green sheet and the meeting minutes, it seems that the thought is that other areas of that historically significant property have, I guess, need more attention, or could have money that's better spent in those other areas versus this building that, based on the facilities assessment, is really going to be an uphill battle.
And to the best of your knowledge, Mike, was there a plan by the city or monies set aside to do something with this building, or is it just it's always in the future,
Not this specific building, no.
I'm pretty familiar with the building. There have been several restaurants there since I've lived here, and none of them really did very well. The building itself is in very poor condition. And thank you very much, Mrs. Lyles, for your commentary. I do appreciate that. And the history. And I know your family well. I knew Frank very well, was a good friend of mine. In view of the expansion and the enhancement of the Wonder Gardens, there's a large resurgence of interest and horsepower, if you will, behind enhancing that so that it becomes a real landmark again in our community. And while I'm sensitive to preserving history in our city, I think we'd be well served to consider demolishing that property so that it's safer and it can be used for better purpose to enhance the experience with the Wonder Gardens.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion that we
Right ahead.
approve the certificate of appropriateness. for that property.
I second that motion.
Any discussion by the board on the motions? The clerk would read the roll, please.
Member Doogie,
Yes.
Member Brown,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Townsend,
Yes.
Chairman Hershenson,
Yes.
Member Lombardo.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. That takes us to 5B, a request to demolish the Goodbread Grocery Building at 27300 Old 41 Road.
Good morning again, Mike Fegan for the record. So similar to the previous item, you have a green sheet and meeting minutes attached for this specific structure. This is the one that's located near the Lyles Hotel. This structure was moved from its previous location. It used to be on the corner of Dean Street and Old 41, and in its final iteration, it was a small restaurant or cafe, if you will. And when that property was rezoned and getting redeveloped, there was a condition put in the zoning to preserve that structure. And the idea was to preserve it by moving it to a city-owned property, which is where it sits currently. What happened with that particular structure is that once engineers got in and started to look around and realized what they had to do to essentially shore up the structure to get it suitable to be moved, at that point, much of the structure was already dilapidated. So what was saved essentially was a facade. And when you look inside, it's just bracing on the inside. That there is no original structural components on the inside of the structure. It's just a facade that got saved. The other aspect from the historic perspective is that once it was moved from its previous location, it lost the ability to obtain grant funding from many areas, including state funding. So because of that, there was a separate fund set aside initially in the budget that was intended to be utilized towards rehabbing or restoring that particular structure. That hinged on a couple different things. A, an amount of money where it could actually be feasible, and B, the city agreeing to a plan for that property going forward. And I think there were issues with both of those things, especially given the fact that not as much of the structure was able to be saved as originally thought. So because it was just a facade, essentially, the amount of time, effort, money that it would take to restore that building to its original significance, I think from the city's perspective, didn't make financial sense in the scope of the overall, of the overall downtown redevelopment area. So similar to what we saw in the previous item, there was a green sheet item and meeting minutes where that particular building was also discussed to be pursued for demolition.
Board members, any questions?
Similar question to the last one. The reason for pursuing this at this juncture again, is the city looking at plans for that space? Are they afraid from a public safety standpoint that this building may fall down on someone, or?
A little bit of both. There are some concepts that the city has reviewed through one of the consultants that the city has, which actually helped write the downtown form-based code, about some concepts for reimagining the Lyles Hotel and Park area that does include utilization of this space. Nothing concrete, nothing set in stone, but the concepts are out there and conversations are starting to happen. Aside from the fact, it's even as just a facade, there have been maintenance issues with it, in terms of it, essentially starting to, I don't want to say essentially fall down, but the bracing's been checked several times since the move. It's had to be painted a couple different times to try and make it a little bit less of an eyesore for the city. I think there's been a lot of comments done about that. So I think at this juncture, just based on what City Council is saying in their green sheet, I think that they've made the decision that that space could be better utilized.
This is one of the buildings where there's a row of buildings, correct?
Correct.
And that was it placed there because they figured it was a good home at the time?
At that point, I think that was initially intended to be somewhat of a temporary placement. So there was a foundation laid, the building was put on top, but I don't think it was ever fully understood whether or not that would be the building's final placement. It was all going to hinge on what I talked about before about the budgetary ability to potentially fix it up. Does that also include another relocation to a more suitable space? All those things that just never came to fruition.
Again, I'm also pretty familiar with that facade, if you will, and the original Dixie Moon Cafe. From an emotional standpoint, and just from a historical standpoint, I would like to see us consider rehabbing it so that it's a monument. It's kind of a monument now, but we can improve the appearance of it, landscaping and so on, and satisfy those folks who've lived here all their lives and generations that have a soft spot in their heart for that particular building. I think that may be a consideration.
On that suggestion by Bob, my question is, does anybody have any kind of a set figure or a range as to what the rehab would be to accomplish this recommendation? I kind of feel the same way relative to knowing that building and so forth. So I just need to have an idea so I can think this out better as to what the financial requirement would be.
If there is a set figure, I'm not aware of it.
I think it's important to keep some historical figures, buildings in the Bonita Springs area, and it's a difficult decision when public money comes into play and the condition of a building. And with the development of downtown Bonita, that no private have expressed interest in that building, or even the last one that we discussed, speaks for something. Again, has anybody shown interest before in the private sector for this building?
In the past, there were concepts that were proposed to City Council of potential viable options for this building. None of them ever took off in terms of gaining steam with council as a viable option. So while they were presented as such, I don't think they were received as such by City Council. But that was a number of years ago, right after the move took place. And since then, it's been relatively quiet. Now, I will say the city's Historic Preservation Board, when they were an active and separate board, there were several years in a row where they set aside some of their budget for pursuing preservation and restoration of this particular building. But to date, my understanding is that that money was sort of being put into a pool in terms of overall what to do with the building and the site as a whole, and that the decision was made again after reviewing the facilities assessment, after understanding the effort that it would take, after understanding that the city is still stewards of historic preservation. The city still owns the Lyles Hotel, which is a historic structure. They own the Wonder Garden site as a whole, which is designated historic, and the two primary buildings there would be the gift shop, which the city has spent money rehabbing after the hurricane, as well as the structure that's in between the gift shop and the cafe that we just talked about called Grandma's House. So the city still is very much involved in historic preservation. I think just when it came down to these two structures, they just hit a point.
I don't want to express this really isn't an opinion thing, but when we looked at the property for the tree advisory board, we said, hey, maybe we should plant some trees in front of it to beautify it. And it seemed like a difficult property to do so because the front of the property had a lot of underground utility usage. And so that seemed impractical. And then peeking into the building, it was pretty much as described. It reminded me of like an old, I don't know if rotting is the right word, but it was like an old movie set that hasn't been maintained. And it seemed, you know, that's separate from the emotional attachment, I guess, but objectively, but what, if it were to be maintained, can you speak a little bit to the, kind of the, what would be required? You know, if this was a decision that was delayed,
Okay.
because there's no reuse plans specifically, I guess maybe there is with a longer-term master plan, but what would be involved in maintaining and sort of beautifying it? Has there been discussions around that at all, I guess, is my question.
If there have, I'm not aware of it, but I would say again, the building itself really is just a shell. So there's no utility hookups, there's no water hookups to it, there's no drywall, there's no insulation, there's no flooring even. So you're talking essentially a full-scale, you know, new building to essentially activate what is a deteriorating facade.
Pardon me, gentlemen, I'm going to request that everyone pull their microphones closer to them and speak into the microphone because there are audio issues.
So with the condition of the building,
Pull it close.
the condition of the building and the work that would need to be done, there wouldn't be much historical left to that building.
In terms of originality, no. Most of it was removed when the building was relocated from its previous position. What's left is the facade, which is original to a point. It's been altered a little bit when it was in its previous spot, but even that would need to essentially be redone. So it would maintain the same shape, but it wouldn't necessarily be all original.
Thank you.
But the part that everybody knows still possibly could be preserved in some way, shape, or form. Again, I'm kind of torn on this, and go ahead.
I was just gonna say, everything old needs facelifting, excuse the expression. Without having a concrete proposal or something that's necessary at this moment, to preserve some of the history, and I think it's in a location where we're trying to preserve the history, with the Lyles Hotel and all that, I'm inclined to delay the certificate approval until such time as we have exhausted everything. If it's not a public safety issue right now where it's ready to fall over on people, I think we just delay it a little bit and see exactly how the final plans come in for that area. But again, it's, you know, I seem to be fighting against the council here, and it's going to be ultimately their decision, but that's my opinion at this juncture.
I would say that not making it into a building again, but keeping the facade, shoring that up in a more or less permanent fashion, making it attractive in keeping with its original looks, but keep it as a facade. I wouldn't say rebuild a building. That would be, you know, this would make it into a monument like it is now, except much more attractive with a little thought to make it so that it's something pleasant to look at. So I agree, delaying it until we could figure out a way to do that would be a good compromise.
I mean, if we approve it today, then there's no going back. I mean, if we don't approve it today and we delay it, we can always approve it at some future date should there be absolutely no options left at that time. But at present, I think there are still some options to see what the final plan is for that entire
I think,
park area.
I think to make it clear, I think the issue of delaying perhaps gets into the weeds a little bit. I think if we were to make a decision to retain the facade, that should be the motion. I feel that makes more sense than trying to get this to be delayed, which is kind of nebulous.
Mr. Chairman, my recommendation would be just to deny the certificate of appropriateness, and let me explain to you a little bit of the rationale I have for that. There really isn't you know, with the original relocation of the Good Bread building was because there was a property owner on the original at the original location. That's, you know, so when you're doing historic preservation, you have the the structure and then the location. It was relocated here, not with a plan, but to preserve the building, so that it essentially was kicked down, the can was kicked down the road. And we're back at that stage now. There's been no plans by the city to do anything. There are no plans currently to do anything with that property. I believe there was a comment about the utilities. I think that, that came up at one point during the city's discussion. So delaying it doesn't do anything because there's no plans. And so it's more of a question of, I think that the city council has not seen any private interest in spending to preserve it. It's just the public interest, and the public has, the city has no additional interest in doing anything with that. So I think delay doesn't give you anything because it, you know, it'd be ultimately the city council is deciding what to do, and they're not doing anything with it except for asking for the demolition. So I think the comments can be, in the minutes, can go on to the city council about looking for preserving, but for the purposes of decision today, I would just go ahead and deny it.
Can I ask one
ahead.
question? This maybe goes back to the very first question I asked. There was an engineering report referred to, I believe, that, and I wrote down poor and deteriorating condition. And if it's referring to the Goodbread building, then my question would be, is there a safety concern if this does get denied? In other words, is the recommendation to, or is the request to have it demolished a safety issue? If not, then, you know, I guess that's the big question.
That's based on my reading of the green sheet and the meeting minutes from city council. The safety concern is a part of it. It may not be the full brunt of it, but it is part of it for both of the structures that you've looked at today. So that aspect of it can't be particularly ignored. The other aspect of it is similar to what Derek had said, is that there hasn't been interest coming from other sectors to want to preserve this particular structure.
I have one more question. How would the city look at a privately owned building in this condition? Would they make the owner of that building fix it up, demolish it, et cetera?
Yes, so you have a section in your code, in your historic preservation code, with regards to demolition and what we call demolition by neglect, which is where there is failed maintenance or upkeep of a particular building or structure. And I would just note again that when the city came into ownership of the structure, it was already in a deteriorated condition.
So just to further that, would the city be in a predicament if they went after a private owner in a different location and then they said, well, you own this building and you've allowed it to deteriorate and be in this condition. Why are you making me fix it up or demolish my building?
So I think, I think in this case, and I'm sorry, I'm apologizing, as I'm not as familiar with the history of it. I wasn't here when the original plans moved forward, but the original owner probably did seek to demolish the structure in its condition. And the city, you know, as a condition of the rezoning, sought to preserve it in some way by relocating to this site. So, you know, and one way, what I think I'm getting to at the end of this, which is with both buildings, you had private owners with private property, with private buildings that allowed them to deteriorate. And the city stepped in to save the Wonder Gardens, and the city stepped in to help move this, to save this building. And no plans have ever been, you know, the city did not have plans. The city stepped in as a stopgap. And the properties have continued to deteriorate without interest, without plans for their future. And so at this point, the city is essentially starting to cut off the bleeding and move forward. I mean,
Thank you.
I'm just trying to boil it down to what it is.
From the standpoint of sentimentality, I guess, what is the board's feeling if to deny the application at this point? Just for that sake, I want to cover all bases here with respect to Mrs. Lyles and other people who are interested in saving it.
If we could save it, save the facade, make it into a monument, something attractive that still maintains its historical appearance, then I would be all for denying the demolition.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
Is there a second?
Second for discussion. The green sheet does talk about and reinforcing the facade, and saying that could end up costing far more than even, just to rebuild a building. So that is in there. Now, I'm just reflecting what's in here, not my opinion, just what it says. So, I mean, that is something they did consider, so.
It's ironic when you have at one point, the owner was interested in demolish, the city gets involved, let's save it. So I know how I'm gonna vote, so,
In for a penny, in for a pound kind of thing. right?
exactly. We ready for the motion? The motion has been made and seconded, so I have to ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
This is a motion to deny. Member Lombardo?
Motion to deny.
Member Lombardo?
Yes.
Chairman Hershenson?
Yes.
Member Doogie?
No.
Vice Chairman Townsend? Member Brown?
No.
Motion carries 3-2. Right, correct?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
I think this is a fun test to send it back to the governing body and see how they appeal it to themselves.
All right, thank you very much, Mike. That's an excellent presentation. Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the meeting of March 17,
moved.
2026.
So moved.
Motion to approve?
Yes.
Second.
Second.
Just be all in favor. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Interesting conversation and meeting. With respect to adjournment, the next meeting is tentatively scheduled for 9 a.m. on May 19th. So at this particular point, a motion to adjourn,
So moved.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.